The Galactic Council chamber fell silent when Ambassador Krell spoke the name. Varkos. Just saying it made the temperature seem to drop. Around the curved table, representatives from 40 different worlds shifted nervously in their seats. Some touched protective charms, others checked that their security details were still present. "He has increased his demands again," Krell said, his blue skin darkening with stress. 3 more freighters of processed metals. 200 data cores containing our agricultural research. And he wants it delivered within 10 planetary rotations. "We cannot keep paying him," protested Senator Yima, her feathers ruffling in agitation. "My world has given him enough technology to advance a civilization. What does he even do with it all?" "He hoards it," said another delegate, a crystalline being whose voice chimed like broken glass. "He sits in his fortress ship surrounded by the stolen advancement of 1,000 worlds. He is a dragon from the old Earth stories. He takes and never gives back." "We should fight," someone suggested weakly. The chamber erupted in nervous chittering and protests. Fight Varkos? The last 3 battle fleets that challenged him had been reduced to floating debris. He had destroyed orbital stations with a single blast from his ship. He had melted through planetary shields that were supposed to be impenetrable. Worse, Varkos himself was nearly indestructible. His species had evolved on a death world where only the strongest survived. He was the last of his kind, and everyone understood why. When your species was that dangerous, eventually they destroyed each other. "We pay," Krell said finally. "We pay, and we survive. That is all we can do." The council members filed out slowly, each returning to their ships to arrange the next tribute payment. Another season of giving their best technology to a monster who would never be satisfied. It had been this way for nearly 300 years. Nobody noticed the small human transport ship that docked at Haven Station that same evening. The Morning Star was not impressive by galactic standards. It carried only 70 people, mostly families of diplomats and trade officials. Humans were still new to the galactic community, barely 50 years since first contact. They were considered curious but largely irrelevant. Physically weak, technologically average, with no special abilities that made them stand out. Captain Daniel Martinez guided his daughter through the docking tube, one hand on her shoulder. Lucy was 8 years old with dark curly hair pulled into 2 ponytails. She clutched a worn journal against her chest and stared at everything with wide brown eyes full of wonder. "Papa, look at that one," she whispered, pointing at a floating jellyfish creature that drifted past. "It is glowing." "That is a luminar," Daniel said. "They communicate through light patterns." "That is so cool," Lucy breathed. Haven Station was a massive trading hub at the edge of Sector 9. Species from across the galaxy came here to exchange goods and information. The main promenade stretched for miles, lined with shops and restaurants, serving food from 100 different worlds. The air recyclers worked constantly to maintain an atmosphere that most species could tolerate. Daniel found the human embassy office tucked between a Krell clothing shop and a restaurant that served something that smelled like burning tires. Ambassador Patricia Morgan greeted them with a tired smile. "Welcome to Haven," she said. "Your quarters are ready. I hope the journey was not too difficult." "It was great," Lucy said. "I learned 17 new words in Trader Standard." Patricia smiled more genuinely. "That is wonderful. We can always use more linguists out here." Her expression darkened as she looked at Daniel. "We need to talk, privately." Daniel nodded and turned to Lucy. "Stay here and practice your vocabulary cards, okay?" "Okay, Papa." In the inner office, Patricia closed the door and immediately said, "Varkos knows you are here." Daniel felt his stomach drop. "Already? He knows when any new ship arrives, especially human ships. He's curious about us." Patricia poured herself a drink from a bottle that definitely was not part of the standard embassy supplies. "He has demanded you present yourself tomorrow morning." "Demanded?" His exact words were, "The human diplomat will come to me, or I will come to the station." Patricia drank deeply. Nobody wants option 2. Daniel sat down heavily. He had known this posting would be dangerous. The outer sectors were wild territory where human influence meant almost nothing. But he had not expected to face the galaxy's most feared being on his first day. What does he want? Nobody knows. He has never requested to meet humans before. He usually just sends his demands through automated messages. Patricia refilled her glass. 17 species have tried to negotiate with him over the centuries. He destroyed half of them and ignored the rest. "What do I do?" "You go. You be polite. You try not to make him angry." Patricia looked miserable. "And you pray that he is just curious?" That night, Daniel could not sleep. He stood at the window of their quarters, looking out at the stars. Behind him, Lucy slept peacefully, her mother's journal tucked under her pillow. His wife had died 2 years ago, and that journal was Lucy's most precious possession. Inside were stories and drawings and little notes. Lucy read them every night. If something happened to him tomorrow, Lucy would be alone. "Papa?" Lucy's sleepy voice came from the bed. "Are you okay?" "Just thinking. About the big meeting tomorrow?" She sat up, somehow knowing, even though he had not told her. "I heard Ambassador Morgan talking. You have to meet someone scary." Daniel turned. "It is nothing for you to worry about. Can I come with you?" "Absolutely not." Lucy hugged her journal. "Mama used to say that scary things are less scary when you are not alone." She wrote it right here. She opened to a page and showed him. In his wife's handwriting, "Face your fears together, because together you are stronger." Daniel felt tears sting his eyes. "Lucy, this is too dangerous, but I want to help." He crossed to the bed and hugged her. "The best way you can help is by staying safe." Lucy nodded against his chest, but Daniel could tell she was not convinced. His daughter had inherited her mother's stubborn courage. It was one of the things he loved most and feared most about her. The morning came too quickly. Daniel stood in the docking bay wearing his best uniform, trying not to show his fear. Ambassador Morgan had arranged for a small shuttle to take him to Varkos's fortress ship. The pilot was a nervous Krell who kept checking his instruments repeatedly. "Papa! Wait!" Daniel turned to see Lucy running across the docking bay, still in her pajamas with her shoes untied. Ambassador Morgan hurried behind her, looking apologetic. "I am sorry she got past me," Morgan said breathlessly. Lucy grabbed her father's hand. "I am coming with you." "Lucy? No. We talked about this. You need me," Lucy said with the absolute certainty that only children possess. "Mama said we face scary things together." Daniel knelt down to her level. "Sweetheart, this is different. This is really dangerous. Then you need me even more." Lucy's brown eyes were determined. "Please, Papa, I have a feeling." Daniel looked at Morgan, who just shrugged helplessly. He knew that tone in his daughter's voice. Once Lucy made up her mind, arguing was pointless. And maybe, he thought, maybe having her there would show Varkos that humans valued family, that they were not just diplomats and statistics. "Fine," he said, "but you stay right beside me. You do not touch anything, and if I tell you to run, you run. Understood?" "Understood," Lucy said solemnly. The shuttle ride took 30 minutes. Through the viewport, Daniel watched Varkos's fortress ship grow larger and larger. It was massive, easily 3 times the size of Haven Station. The hull was dark metal, covered in markings from 1,000 battles. Weapons arrays bristled from every surface. Along the sides hung trophies, pieces of destroyed ships displayed like hunting prizes. "That is the command ship of the Sarkhan fleet," the pilot said quietly, pointing at a severed vessel wing. "Arcos destroyed all 40 ships in less than an hour. That was 70 years ago." Lucy pressed her face against the viewport. "It looks lonely," she said. The pilot looked at her like she was crazy. "Lonely? All those broken pieces. Like he is keeping memories of fights because he has nothing else to keep." Daniel squeezed her hand. His daughter saw the world differently than most people. Where others saw danger and destruction, she looked for the story underneath. They docked at a hangar that could have held 50 shuttles. The doors sealed behind them with a sound like a prison closing. 2 guards waited for them, tall reptilian beings with scaled skin and cold eyes. They wore armor that looked more ceremonial than practical, covered in engravings. "The human diplomat," one guard said. His voice was deep and rumbling. "Varkos is waiting. Follow." "What about the child?" the other guard asked. "She stays with me," Daniel said firmly. The guards looked at each other, then shrugged. Apparently Varkos had not given specific instructions about children. They walked through corridors that stretched impossibly far. The walls were lined with display cases containing artifacts from dozens of civilizations, ancient weapons, pieces of art, fragments of technology that Daniel could not identify. Each item had a small plaque with text in a language he did not recognize. Lucy stopped at one case containing a small carved figure. "That is pretty," she said. "Keep moving," a guard ordered. They passed through 3 security checkpoints, each one scanning them thoroughly. Finally, they reached a massive set of doors carved with images of battles and conquest. The doors opened slowly, and heat washed out from the chamber beyond. The throne room was enormous. The ceiling disappeared into shadows far above. Pillars thick as trees supported the structure. And at the far end, on a platform of black stone, was Varkos. He was huge, easily 20 feet tall even while sitting. His body was covered in scales that ranged from deep crimson to almost black. 4 powerful legs ended in claws that could tear through steel. Wings were folded against his back, the membranes showing scars from old wounds. His head was elongated with rows of horns curving backward. Smoke curled from his nostrils with each breath. But it was his eyes that held Daniel frozen. They were amber, glowing with inner fire, ancient and cold. "The humans," Varkos said. His voice was like thunder rolling through mountains. It vibrated in Daniel's chest. "At last you come before me." Daniel bowed, pulling Lucy down with him. "Great Varkos, I am Captain Daniel Martinez, diplomatic envoy from Earth. It is an honor to meet you." "Honor?" Varkos repeated, and Daniel could not tell if he was amused or insulted. "Well, the 40 species of this sector send tribute because they fear me, not because they honor me. Do not lie in my presence, human." "I meant no offense," Daniel said quickly. Varkos leaned forward, smoke curling thicker. "Your species is weak, physically fragile, technologically inferior. You have nothing I want. So tell me, why should I not simply demand tribute from you as I do from all the others?" Daniel felt sweat running down his back. Every instinct screamed at him to grab Lucy and run. But he forced himself to stand straight, because humans believe in cooperation, not domination. "We prefer to make friends rather than enemies." "Friends," Varkos laughed, and it sounded like rocks grinding together. "I do not have friends. I have servants and enemies. Which will you be?" Before Daniel could answer, Lucy stepped forward. "Papa," she whispered. "Lucy, stay back," Daniel hissed. But Lucy was already walking toward the platform, her small shoes clicking on the stone floor. The guards moved to stop her, but Varkos raised one claw, and they froze. Lucy stopped at the base of the platform and looked up at the massive dragon. She studied him carefully, tilting her head to one side. Then she said something that made the entire room go silent. "Are you lonely?" Varkos stared at her. Smoke stopped curling from his nostrils. His amber eyes narrowed. "What did you say, child?" "I asked if you were lonely," Lucy repeated. "You remind me of my grandpa before he died. Everyone thought he was mean and scary, but really he was just sad and lonely." Varkos did not move for a long moment. The silence stretched so tight that Daniel could hear his own heartbeat. The guards stood frozen, clearly waiting to see if their master would incinerate the small human child who had just asked him a personal question. Then, something impossible happened. Varkos laughed. Not the grinding, threatening sound from before, but something that almost sounded genuine. "Lonely," he said, settling back on his throne. "No one has asked me such a question in 3 centuries. They ask for mercy. They offer tribute. They make threats they cannot keep. But lonely?" He looked at Lucy with those ancient amber eyes. "Why would you think such a thing, small human?" Lucy did not seem afraid at all. "Because of your collection. My grandpa collected things too. Old photos, medals from his time in service, letters from people who were not around anymore. He said keeping things helped him remember he was not always alone." She pointed at the display cases lining the walls. "You keep all these things from different worlds, important things, beautiful things, but you keep them where only you can see them. That is what lonely people do." Varkos's eyes flickered. "Perhaps I keep them as trophies, reminders of my victories." "Maybe," Lucy said. "But I saw a bookcase back in the hallway. Books are for reading, not for showing off. And some of those books looked really old and worn, like someone read them many times. My mama had books like that. Her favorites." Daniel wanted to pull his daughter back, but he was also fascinated. Varkos had not attacked. In fact, the dragon seemed genuinely engaged with what Lucy was saying. "You are observant for one so young," Varkos said. "What else do you see, little human?" Lucy moved closer, climbing the first step of the platform. The guards tensed, but Varkos waved them back. She pointed at his left wing. "That wing does not fold the same as the other one. It hurts you sometimes, does it not? And those scars on your shoulder look really old, like they happened a long, long time ago, but never fully healed." "The Battle of Cullis Prime," Varkos said quietly. 400 years ago. I was younger then. Less careful." He shifted his wing, and Lucy was right. It moved stiffly. "The wounds are from weapons that no longer exist, made by people who are all dead now." "That sounds really lonely," Lucy said softly, being the only one left who remembers. For the first time since they entered, Varkos looked away from them. His gaze moved to the displays, to the artifacts, to the books. "I am the last of my kind. The Varkosian race destroyed itself in wars that burned entire star systems. I survived because I left." I ran away while my people killed each other over territory and resources and pride. His voice dropped lower. Every being I grew up with is dead. Every place I knew is destroyed. Even my language is extinct. I speak Trader Standard now because there is no one left to speak my native tongue with. Lucy's eyes filled with tears. That is the saddest thing I ever heard. Varkos looked back at her, surprised by her emotion. You should fear me, child. I have destroyed fleets. I have leveled cities. My mama used to say that hurt people sometimes hurt others, Lucy said, wiping her eyes. She said, we should try to understand why people are mean before we decide they are bad. Daniel finally found his voice. Lucy, maybe we should let Varkos rest. No, Varkos said sharply. Then, more gently, no. Let her speak. It has been a very long time since anyone spoke to me as anything other than a threat or a source of fear. Lucy smiled. Can I ask you about your books? I love reading. My mama gave me her journal before she died, and I read it every night. She wrote stories and poems and things she noticed about the world. Your mother is dead? Varkos asked. Lucy nodded. 2 years ago. She got sick and the medicine did not work. Papa says she is watching over us from somewhere nice, but I miss her a lot. I understand that feeling, Varkos said. Come, I will show you my library. What happened next amazed Daniel. Varkos stood slowly, his massive form rising to its full height, and gestured for them to follow. They walked through corridors that became more personal, less like a fortress. The library was a vast circular room with shelves reaching up 3 stories. Books and data cores and scrolls from hundreds of civilizations filled every space. Lucy gasped. This is amazing. It is my true treasure, Varkos admitted. Knowledge from 1,000 worlds. Some of these texts are the last copies in existence. I have saved them from wars and disasters and time itself. You are a protector, Lucy said. Not a destroyer. Not really. Varkos sat down, bringing his enormous head closer to Lucy's level. I became feared because fear kept me safe. After my world died, I learned that the galaxy respects only strength, so I became the strongest. I took what I needed to survive, and over time, I forgot how to be anything else. It is not too late to change, Lucy said. My grandpa was grumpy and mean for years after Grandma died. But then I was born, and Papa says I helped him remember how to smile again. People can change if they have a reason to. And what reason would I have, small one? Lucy thought for a moment, then smiled. Because being feared is not the same as being happy. And because you have all these wonderful books that nobody else gets to enjoy. That seems like a waste. Varkos studied her for a long time. Then he did something that Daniel would not have believed possible. He lowered his massive head and let Lucy touch his scaled snout. What is your name, child? Lucy Martinez. Lucy Martinez? Varkos repeated. Would you like to visit my library again? I could teach you about the civilizations these books come from. Lucy looked at her father with pleading eyes. Daniel, still processing everything he had witnessed, nodded slowly. I would love that, Lucy said. Can I bring my drawings next time? I like to draw the things I read about. I would like that very much, Varkos said, and for the first time in perhaps centuries, he sounded genuinely pleased. Over the following weeks, something remarkable happened. Lucy visited Varkos 3 times each week, always bringing her drawings and her mother's journal. Daniel accompanied her at first, watching in amazement as his 8-year-old daughter and the galaxy's most feared being discussed ancient poetry and extinct civilizations. Varkos taught her about the cultivation wars, about the rise and fall of the crystal dynasties, about mathematical principles discovered and lost dozens of times throughout galactic history. Lucy listened with complete attention, asked thoughtful questions, and shared her own observations that sometimes made even Varkos pause and reconsider. The relationship did not go unnoticed. Word spread through Haven Station and beyond. The Galactic Council held emergency meetings to discuss what Varkos' sudden change in behavior meant. Some thought it was a trick. Others worried he was being manipulated by the humans, but the evidence was undeniable. Varkos had reduced his tribute demands by half. He had stopped threatening colonies. He even returned a stolen artifact to the Imani people with a note apologizing for taking it. The universe has gone mad, Ambassador Morgan said to Daniel one evening. Do you understand what is happening? Your daughter has done what entire battle fleets could not do. She has changed Varkos. She just treated him like a person instead of a monster, Daniel replied. Sometimes that is all anyone needs. On Lucy's 12th visit, she arrived with a large drawing she had spent 3 days working on. It showed Varkos in his library, surrounded by books, but instead of looking fierce, she had drawn him looking peaceful. "Almost happy. I made this for you, Grandpa Varkos," she said, using the nickname that had developed naturally over their visits. Varkos froze. His amber eyes widened. "What did you call me?" Lucy looked worried. I am sorry. Is that okay? You teach me things and tell me stories and make sure I am safe, just like my grandpa used to. I thought maybe you would not mind if I called you that." Varkos was quiet for so long that Daniel stepped forward, ready to intervene. Then the great dragon lowered his head until it was level with Lucy. "No one has called me anything but my name or a title in over 300 years, Varkos said, and his voice was thick with emotion. Daniel had never heard from him. To be called Grandpa, to be considered family, I had forgotten such things existed. "So it is okay?" Lucy asked hopefully. "It is more than okay, little one. It is a gift beyond price." That same evening, aboard a warship hidden behind Haven Station's smaller moon, Zex Corvan studied surveillance images of Varkos's fortress. Corvain was a Krell mercenary who led the most dangerous criminal organization in 3 sectors. He had been watching the situation with growing interest. "The dragon has gone soft," he said to his second-in-command. "He is distracted by a human child. This is our chance." "You want to raid Varkos?" his officer asked nervously. "That is suicide." "Not if we are smart about it," Corvain said. "We strike during the child's next visit. Varkos will be focused on protecting her, not his vault. We grab what we can and leave before he can respond. With his technology, we could control this entire sector." "And the child?" Corvain smiled coldly. "We take her too. Insurance, in case the dragon comes after us." 3 days later, Lucy skipped through the corridors of Varkos's fortress, excited to show him the new story she had written. Daniel walked beside her, carrying a container of human cookies that Lucy insisted Varkos should try, even though they had no idea if his biology could process them. They were halfway to the library when the first explosion rocked the ship. Daniel grabbed Lucy and pushed her against the wall. "What was that?" Alarms began blaring. Varkos's guards rushed past them toward the whole breach. Another explosion. Closer this time. Smoke began filling the corridor. "Papa, what is happening?" Lucy cried. "We are under attack," Daniel said. "We need to find Varkos." They ran toward the library, but a blast door sealed in front of them. Through the gaps, Daniel could see armed figures in combat armor moving through the smoke. The Krell Syndicate markings were clear on their shoulders. "The vault is 3 levels down," one raider shouted. "Move." "What about the dragon?" another asked. "Let him come. We have enough firepower to handle one ancient lizard." Daniel pulled Lucy into a side chamber, pressing a finger to his lips. She nodded, eyes wide with fear. He could hear the raiders moving past, heading deeper into the ship. If they reached the vault, they would steal centuries of collected knowledge and technology, but more importantly, if Varkos engaged them in battle, the entire ship could become a war zone. "Stay here," Daniel whispered to Lucy. "Hide and do not come out until I come back for you. Where are you going?" "To warn Varkos." But before he could move, the chamber's far wall exploded inward. 3 raiders stood in the breach, weapons aimed directly at them. "Well, well," one said, recognizing Lucy from intelligence photos. "The dragon's little pet. Corvain will be pleased." "Run, Lucy," Daniel shouted, throwing himself at the nearest raider. Lucy ran, but not away. She ran deeper into the fortress, toward the library, screaming at the top of her lungs. "Grandpa! Grandpa Varkos! Help!" The roar that answered her shook the entire ship. It was not the sound of a monster. It was the sound of a grandfather whose family was in danger. And somewhere in the depths of the fortress, Varkos moved with speed and fury that the galaxy had not witnessed in decades. The raiders had made a terrible miscalculation. They thought they were robbing a complacent dragon. They did not understand they were threatening the first being Varkos had called family in 300 years. And that was a mistake they would not survive. Varkos emerged from the library like a force of nature. His wings spread wide, scraping the corridor ceiling. Fire burned in his throat, casting flickering orange light across the smoke-filled passages. But this was not the mindless destroyer the galaxy feared. This was precise, controlled fury. The raiders who had grabbed Daniel suddenly found themselves facing 20 feet of ancient dragon rage. Varkos's tail swept through the corridor, sending 2 of them flying into walls with bone-breaking force. The third raised his weapon, but Varkos was faster. One claw pinned the raider to the floor while Varkos bent down to check on Daniel. "Are you hurt?" Varkos asked. "I'm fine," Daniel gasped. But Lucy ran toward the library. "I heard her call for me," Varkos said. "Stay behind me." They moved through the fortress together. Varkos's guards had engaged the main raider force near the vault entrance. Energy weapons flashed in the darkness. The air smelled of burning metal and ozone. Corvain had brought 40 fighters, all heavily armed and equipped with armor designed to withstand plasma fire. But they had not planned for Varkos fighting not as a destroyer, but as a protector. He moved through the battle with purpose, using his bulk to shield his own guards while striking at the raiders with devastating accuracy. His tail knocked weapons from hands. His wings created wind that threw enemies off balance. And, when necessary, controlled bursts of flame drove attackers back without killing them. "He is not even trying to kill us," one raider shouted in confusion. "Fall back," Corvain ordered through the communication channel. "Regroup at extraction point Beta." But Lucy had run straight to the library, and that was where Corvain himself waited with his elite squad. When Varkos and Daniel arrived, they found Lucy backed into a corner, Corvain's weapon aimed at her small form. "One more step, dragon, and the child dies," Corvain said calmly. Varkos stopped. The fire in his throat dimmed. "Let her go. Take what you want from my vault, but let her go." "Your vault?" Corvain laughed. "I am looking at your real treasure right here." The mighty Varkos brought low by a human child. "Do you know how many people would pay to see this?" Lucy was crying, but when she saw Varkos, her fear changed to something else. "I am sorry, Grandpa. I should have hidden like Papa said." "You did nothing wrong, little one," Varkos said gently. Then to Corvain, "What do you want?" "Safe passage off this ship with the girl. Once we are clear, we will release her unharmed." Corvain gestured to his squad. "You try to follow, she dies. You try to shoot down our ship, she dies. You cooperate, and maybe she lives." Daniel started forward, but Varkos blocked him with one wing. The dragon's mind was racing. 300 years of survival instincts, of tactical experience, of learning to read enemies. Corvain was lying. He had no intention of releasing Lucy. She was too valuable as leverage. "I have a counteroffer," Varkos said. "You are not in a position to negotiate. Am I not?" Varkos's eyes gleamed. "You came here for technology, for knowledge. I will give you something better. I will give you my word. Your word means nothing to me. Then you are a fool," Varkos said. "My word has stood for 3 centuries. I swear on my honor as the last of my kind that if you release the child, I will not pursue you. I will not seek revenge. I will let you leave this sector alive." Corvain hesitated. The offer was tempting. Varkos's reputation for keeping his word was actually well known, but it was also too good to be true. While he hesitated, Lucy did something brave and foolish. She dropped to the floor and rolled away from Corvain's weapon. In the split second of confusion, Daniel lunged forward and tackled Corvain. They both went down, the weapon skittering across the floor. Varkos moved, not with the slow caution of negotiation, but with the speed that had made his species' apex predators. He swept through the elite squad like wind through grass. Armor that could stop plasma fire crumpled under claws that had evolved to tear through rock. Within seconds, all 5 elite fighters were disabled, not dead but thoroughly incapacitated. Corvain struggled with Daniel, reaching for a backup weapon. But Lucy grabbed a heavy book from the floor and brought it down on his head with surprising force. Corvain slumped unconscious. "That was for pointing a gun at my grandpa," Lucy said fiercely. The remaining raiders surrendered when they realized their leader was captured. Varkos's guards secured them efficiently. Within an hour, the fortress was clear. Haven Station security arrived to take the prisoners into custody. Ambassador Morgan showed up personally, looking stunned at the scene. "Is everyone all right?" she asked. "We are fine," Daniel said, holding Lucy close. Varkos sat heavily in his library, suddenly looking very old and very tired. Lucy pulled away from her father and ran to the dragon, throwing her small arms around his massive foreleg as far as they would reach. "You saved me," she said. "You saved yourself," Varkos replied. "That was very brave and very dangerous. I learned from the best," Lucy said, looking up at him with complete trust. Varkos carefully wrapped one wing around her in an approximation of a hug. "I was so afraid I would lose you. For 300 years I had nothing worth protecting, and then you walked into my fortress and called me lonely, and everything changed. Does that mean you are not lonely anymore?" Lucy asked. "No, little one. I am not lonely anymore." News of the battle spread across the sector within days. But the story was not about Varkos the Destroyer defeating raiders. It was about Varkos the Protector defending his granddaughter. The Galactic Council watched in amazement as the dragon they had feared for centuries transformed before their eyes. Varkos announced he would open his library to scholars from any peaceful species. He established a foundation to preserve endangered knowledge and dying languages. And he created the Lucy Martinez Scholarship for Orphan Children across the galaxy, ensuring that young people who had lost their families would have access to education and support. 6 months later, Haven Station held a ceremony. The Galactic Council officially recognized Varkos, not as a threat, but as guardian of Haven. Representatives from 40 worlds attended, many of whom had spent centuries fearing him. Lucy stood at the podium looking tiny in front of the massive crowd. She wore a new dress for the occasion, but she still carried her mother's journal. "My mama wrote that everyone needs family," Lucy said, her voice amplified across the chamber. "She wrote that being alone is the scariest thing in the universe. When I met Grandpa Varkos, everyone said he was a monster, but I saw someone who was just really, really lonely. And I think a lot of scary people are just lonely people that nobody tried to understand." She looked back at Varkos, who sat behind her on a specially built platform. "Grandpa Varkos is the strongest person I know. Not because he can destroy fleets or fight bad guys, even though he is really good at that. He is strong because he was brave enough to change. He was brave enough to let someone care about him. And that is the hardest kind of bravery there is." The chamber erupted in applause. Even the species who had feared Varkos for centuries found themselves moved by the small human girl's words. Later that evening, back in the library, Lucy sat beside Varkos, reading from a book about ancient Earth mythology. Daniel watched from a comfortable chair, sipping tea that one of Varkos's guards had learned to make specifically for humans. "The story's about a dragon too," Lucy said. "But it is different. A dragon guards a treasure and fights a hero. That was my life for a long time," Varkos said, "guarding my horde and fighting anyone who came close. But not anymore?" "No," Varkos said, looking at the girl beside him and the man across the room. "Now I guard something far more precious than technology or knowledge. I guard my family." Lucy smiled and leaned against his scaled leg. "Good. Because grandpas are supposed to be there for family dinners and birthdays and teaching important stuff. You have 300 years of birthdays to make up for." Varkos laughed, the sound warm and genuine. "Then we should start immediately." "When is your next birthday?" 4 months, Lucy said. "And I want a really big cake." "Then you shall have the biggest cake Haven Station has ever seen," Varkos promised. Outside the library windows, ships came and went from the station. Species that had once paid tribute in fear now came to trade in peace. Children from a dozen worlds had started visiting the library, learning from the ancient dragon who had discovered that the greatest treasure was not things collected, but connections made. And in the center of it all was a small human girl who had looked at the galaxy's most feared being and simply asked if he was lonely. That one question had changed everything. It proved that sometimes the strongest power in the universe was not strength or fear or even courage. Sometimes it was just kindness, offered freely to someone who needed it most. Varkos had spent 300 years being strong. Now finally, he could spend his remaining centuries being happy. And it had all started with one small human calling him Grandpa. The end.